This show is intended for mature audiences only.
Hello, humans, and welcome to another episode of Gen X Gamer. That's right, the video game show that is not hosted by an annoying clickbaiter. We only talk about video games, the business of video games, and cover topics that mainstream YouTubers don't cover. Now, with that said, do me a favor. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and now let's get ready for the show. On today's episode... Hello, humans, and welcome to another episode of Gen X Gamer. Concord has the potential to be the biggest disaster in video game history, money-wise. We're talking about $3.6 billion. Can you imagine one game alone, destroying that much capital? It is insane, guys. Now, let me tell you, what I'm going to talk about here is not what people usually talk about, because I'm more interested in the money aspect of it. I'm more interested in the business side of this and what bad decisions were made. Let me tell you something, guys. Everybody talks about the pronouns, this and that and the other, and I don't think it's about that when it comes to money. When it comes to money, your job is to sell the most amount of products to the most amount of customers. That's just it. You want your product to appeal to as many people as possible. And that's where this project starts going wrong. And it doesn't matter what people say. I always go to the numbers. The numbers reflect that 80% of your market are heterosexual male, right? For console gaming specifically. Might be a little less in the PC world, but it's actually probably more because it's so underreported. But in general, I think 80% is a good base number to start with. So when you make a game that's for a minority, right, that's something that you make if you're doing an indie game, right? Something that blows up that not many people know about, if you're making it for a niche market. But if you want to produce to the masses, you can't force something on them that they're not looking for, specifically not looking for. If there's a food you don't like, nobody's going to force you to like it, right? I don't like green peas. I hate them. It doesn't matter how you present them. I don't care what kind of plate you put on them. I'm not eating them, period. Ever, for no reason. That's the problem you have here. You have a product marketed to a public that doesn't want your product, that have clearly told you what kind of product they want, and this isn't it, right? But besides that, you look at the acquisition itself. Let me tell you, this would have never happened to Nintendo. And the reason is, when Nintendo acquires something, it's a very slow process. If you look, for example, at their integration of online gameplay, for example, it's not even there. Look how many years the Switch has been out for. What? It's 7-8 years now, and it's still not there. It's not even close to what everybody else has, right? Because it's a very slow process. They measure 3 times before they cut once. Right? And that's usually how they do it in software, not in hardware all the time. They've had a couple of missteps, but in software, they don't lose on purpose, right? On purpose, they look for themselves to put themselves in a position with whatever product they put out is going to make money. It might not make the most amount of money, but it's not going to lose money. And let me tell you, that's a very, very important thing to do for a company that wants to succeed long term. And if you don't think that's important, let me tell you this. Nintendo could, let's just say for the sake of argument, release the Switch 2 tomorrow, and it bombs, right? It doesn't do well, it doesn't sell, nobody's buying it. Please excuse my voice, guys. I had 2 treatments a couple of weeks ago. I started sounding better, but my voice is back to being like this again. But if Nintendo was to have a flop with a Switch 2, all they would have to do is release one game in other platforms. Whether it was Super Mario Bros. 3, let's say they put that out for the PlayStation and for the Xbox and sold it for $20. Overnight, it would be in the top 10, if not top 5, right away. Now, can you imagine if they decide to release, I don't know, Super Smash Bros. On the PlayStation? Can you imagine the number of sales it would make? That's how important the software is. That's how important the development of these games are, that they can take you through bad times, right? You can't say that about Concord, right? Nintendo delayed Metroid Prime
for all that time. And that's the way they operate. What Sony should have done, right, is integrate this company into their work culture and how do they do business and what the goals were, specifically for this game. If you have a $3.6 billion deal on the table, you want to make sure that you don't lose money. It doesn't matter if you only make 10%, but you don't want to lose 90%. And that's a situation Sony's in here because they didn't really guide this project properly. If the expectations were set from the beginning that this company had to follow Sony standards, that there was a monetary responsibility that had to be held with this game to a minimum, right? That it had to meet certain customer satisfaction metrics, then this wouldn't happen. But none of that happened. They bought the studio and basically let it run on its own and run amok, and they didn't pay attention to the inner workings of the company. They definitely weren't listening to the employees regarding, the reports as far as a toxic work environment. That's for sure. They didn't go in there. They didn't do their surveys. It's part of quality of any company producing any type of software. There are employee satisfaction surveys that go out there. Not that companies listen to them. But when they're serious like this, companies do pay attention to them. But obviously nobody did that at Firewalk Studios. Nobody felt they had the power. So now here's Firewalk Studios with the responsibility of a $3.6 billion deal, making this game in not the best work environment, right? Making it for a niche audience. Because this audience might be very loud on social media, but when it comes to the numbers, when it comes to sales, when it comes to what matters, which is money, these are not gamers. This is why a lot of the heads of these studios, a lot of the journalists, a lot of the game developers talk down on gamers because they don't relate to them, right? They are not gamers themselves. They work in gaming, but they're not the people purchasing the games. Listen to your customers, something very, very important if you're looking out there to sell things to millions and millions of people. And worst of all, for PlayStation and Concord, you have Marvel's Rivals on the horizon, which looks far superior, which has characters that people beloved already, right? There's no robots with pronouns, I promise you that much. I'm telling you, there is nothing that I could see specifically wrong with Concord other than it's just meh, it's not appealing, and it's made for a niche audience. That is not what you want of a premier AAA game where you have $3.6 billion on the line. That is absolutely not what you're looking for to have. You can't have this kind of disaster on your hands and think that it's just going to slip by. This is what interests me about this story right here, that this was so badly managed, right? From all the quality metrics, from all the consumer metrics, from everything. They just bought the studio and let it run, put it on autopilot and think that everything was going to be okay. When none of this was proven, that is insane. That tells you that even rich, well-educated people can make very basic bonehead mistakes. This should have never happened. This project should have been monitored from the very get-go when you knew that the entirety of this deal was sitting on this game. And now here you are counting down the days to disaster because it's inevitable, right? It's like Thanos. No matter what you do from it, you can't run from it, you can't escape from it. They've already doubled down. This is going to be a financial disaster. And in my opinion, when this releases, it's going to be the biggest financial disaster due to mismanagement, right? Because when it comes to holding people accountable, you can't hold employees that weren't trained properly accountable for mistakes that the CEO, that management, that the larger heads of the corporation should have known things to do that were never done in this case. It's on their head. It's on their dime. I am sure that heads are going to roll. And it's usually the smaller heads, right? But the people who should really be accountable here are the studio heads, are the presidents, the CEOs. This deal was mismanaged from the word go, and they should take the brunt of the responsibility. Remember, it's like Miyamoto said, what is it that he said? A late game can always be good, but a bad game will be bad forever. All right, humans, I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.
New videos every Monday and Sunday. Thank you for joining me on another episode of the Gen X Gamer. Remember to like and subscribe, click that notification bell, and remember, never ever be afraid to be happy. I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.